Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the secrets hidden within corporate filings. And let me tell you, this Retirement Blend 2035 Fund Report has some interesting numbers hiding in plain sight that we're going to uncover. Get ready to see how your retirement investments are performing behind the scenes. Alright, so we're diving into the semi-annual shareholder report for the T. Rowe Price Retirement Blend 2035 Fund as of the 30th of November 2025. This report is basically a look under the hood at how your money managed by this fund has been doing over the last 6 months. And before we get too deep, if you are finding this kind of breakdown helpful, make sure you are subscribed. We also have a Discord community linked in the description below where we chat about these filings in real time. Let's kick things off with something that impacts every investor directly: costs for a hypothetical $10,000 investment in the investor class of this fund. The cost for the last 6 months came out to about $21. That translates to 0.40% of your investment. Now for the I class, those costs were even lower, just $12 on that same $10,000, which is 0.23%. So you can see there is a noticeable difference between the two share classes, with the I class being more cost effective. Now for some key numbers about the fund itself. As of the 30th of November 2025, the total net assets for this fund were a massive $1,137,111,000. That is over $1 billion, and the number of individual investments or portfolio holdings it has is 25. They're also keeping a pretty steady hand on the wheel with a portfolio turnover rate of 6.6%, meaning they're not buying and selling assets too frequently. Let's break down where this money is actually invested. A significant chunk, 53.7%, is in domestic equity funds. That means investments in US companies. Then 22.8% is in international equity funds. So companies outside the US bonds are also playing a role, with 13.9% in domestic bond funds and 6.4% in international bond funds. 3.2% is in short-term and other investments. This shows a clear tilt towards stocks, especially US stocks, which makes sense for a fund targeting a 2035 retirement blend. Digging a bit deeper, let's look at the biggest individual investments. The top holding, making up 23.4% of the fund, is the T. Rowe Price Equity Index 500 fund. This means they're heavily invested in the S&P 500. Following that is the T. Rowe Price International Equity Index fund at 11.2%. Then we have the T. Rowe Price QM US Bond Index Fund at 8.7%. Other significant holdings include the T. Rowe Price Value Fund and the T. Rowe Price Growth Stock Fund. This mix suggests a strategy that aims to capture broad market movements through index funds, while also incorporating actively managed funds with a value and growth focus. We're seeing here that the fund is invested in a variety of T. Rowe Price's own mutual funds, which is a common strategy for target date funds. They essentially use other specialized funds as building blocks to create their diversified portfolio. Now let's look at the actual performance of the fund's net asset value per S-Hair. For the investor class starting at $11.07, it grew to $12.37 by the 30th of November 2025. This represents a total return of 11.74% for the 6-month period. The I class also saw a strong performance, moving from $11.07 to $12.38 with a total return of 11.83%. These are solid returns, especially considering the period. Looking at the ratios to average net assets, the gross expenses before payments by price associates for the investor class were 0.40%, and the net expenses after those payments remained at 0.40%. For the I class, gross and net expenses were both 0.23%. This confirms what we saw earlier about the cost difference between the classes. Net investment income stands at 1.02% for the investor class and 1.19% for the I class. Here is where the rubber meets the road, the actual list of what the fund owns. We've already touched on the asset allocation and top holdings, but this detailed list shows everything from bond funds to equity funds and even short-term investments like money market funds. Notice they hold a significant amount, over $98 million in just the T. Rowe Price Equity Index 500 fund. They also hold nearly $37 million in the International Bond Fund, USD hedged, and over $32 million in the US Treasury Long-Term Index Fund. This detailed breakdown confirms their strategy of building diversification through underlying T. Rowe Price funds. This section highlights that the fund invests in other T. Rowe Price funds, which are considered affiliated companies for the 6 months ended the 30th of November 2025. The fund saw a net realized loss of $336,000 from these affiliated investments, but more significantly, a change in net unrealized gain of $98 million. This $98 million in unrealized gains is a crucial part of their overall performance for the period, reflecting the appreciation of their holdings in other T. Rowe Price funds. Looking at the statement of assets and liabilities, we see the fund's total assets at a substantial $1,148,335,000, with net assets of $1,137,111,000. The net asset value per S-share for the investor class is $12.37, and for the I class, it is $12.38. This is a very healthy balance sheet for the fund. The statement of operations shows that for the 6 months ended the 30th of November 2025, the fund had investment income of $5,447,000. When you add the net realized and unrealized gain of $97,976,000, the total increase in net assets from operations was $103,423,000. This indicates a very strong period of growth driven primarily by unrealized gains in their underlying fund investments. This statement tracks the movement of the fund's net assets. For the 6 months ended the 30th of November 2025, the fund saw an increase in net assets from operations of over $103 million. Importantly, there were no distributions to shareholders for this period, meaning all gains were reinvested, which is typical for a retirement fund aiming for long-term growth. The significant increase in net assets from capital share transactions, over $248 million, shows a healthy inflow of new investments, with shares sold significantly outweighing shares redeemed. Note 1. Significant accounting policies, the footnotes here, explain how the fund recognizes its investments and income. They use generally accepted accounting principles in the United States. They also mention that the fund is invested in other T. Rowe Price mutual funds and that the asset mix will become more conservative over time, which is a key characteristic of target date retirement funds. This means as you get closer to the target retirement year, the fund will gradually shift from more aggressive assets like stocks to more conservative ones like bonds. Note 5. Related party transactions. This section addresses the fact that the fund is managed by T. Rowe Price Associates, Inc., which also manages the underlying funds the Retirement Blend 2035 fund invests in. This is a common structure within large asset management companies. They detail the fees and services provided, and it is good to see that the annual all-inclusive fee for the investor class is at 0.40% and for the I class at 0.23%, which aligns with our earlier cost analysis. Note 7. Other matters. This part touches on broader market risks. It mentions unpredictable environmental, political, social, and economic events, like natural disasters, geopolitical developments, or public health crises, could impact the fund's investments. This is a standard risk disclosure in almost all financial filings and serves as a reminder that no investment is completely free from external uncertainties. So, let's put it all together. The T. Rowe Price Retirement Blend 2035 Fund, as of November 2025, demonstrated solid performance. The significant increase in net assets was largely driven by unrealized gains in its underlying T. Rowe Price Fund holdings, showing strong market appreciation during the reporting period. The fund's allocation remains heavily weighted towards domestic equities, with a significant portion in broad market index funds like the S&P 500, alongside value and growth funds, which is a sensible approach for a fund targeting retirement in 2035. The cost difference between the investor and I classes is substantial, highlighting the benefit of the I class for larger investments or for those investing through specific channels that offer access to it. No distributions were paid out, indicating a focus on reinvesting gains for long-term compounding. Looking at the company's direction, T. Rowe Price continues to leverage its own family of funds to construct its target date offerings, a strategy that ensures internal expertise and alignment across its product lines. The company manages a vast amount of assets, and this fund is just a small piece of that larger picture. The primary risks are the standard market volatility and the inherent uncertainties of global events as outlined in the report. The opportunity, of course, lies in continued market growth and the fund's ability to navigate the eventual glide path towards more conservative investments as the 2035 target date approaches. Overall, for the period ending the 30th of November 2025, the Retirement Blend 2035 fund appears to be executing its strategy effectively, delivering positive returns and managing its assets in a diversified manner. Alright, that is our breakdown of the T. Rowe Price Retirement Blend 2035 fund's latest filing. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the fund's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps. And subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.